Kublan and Ablat Gemara. We are up to the Lamed Test Amid Aleph, the fourth pedic of Sechta Yoma. Says the Gemara, Toraf Bekalpi. They go ahead. They had a box. Toraf Rashi means they put in the box very quickly, so you shouldn't have it, and take it out very quickly. You shouldn't have a time to study what's inside the box. Other Rishonim say, so like the Tracy Shani means they used to mix them up, scramble them. The Hellish Negarols, and they had two lotteries. One was on the right and one was on the left, because the goats were standing by him, one on the right side and one on the left side. And that which ever came up on his right hand, he would put on top of the animal that's on the right side, and whatever came up on the left hand would put an animal on the left side. Echad Kosev Olav L'Shem, the Echad Kosev Olav L'Azazel. One was written to Hashem's name, and the other one was written that is going to the Azazel. Hasgan Beyaminai, the deputy Kohen Gadol was on his right side, the Rosh base of Mismoilai, and the Rosh base of, that's the head of the family of that particular day, is standing on his left side. So it goes as follows. Im Shel Shem Allah Beyaminai, if Hashem, when I say Hashem Chatzas comes up on his right side, then Hasgan, who happens to be standing on his right side, Oimlai tells him, Ishi Kohen Gadol. He says, my person, the Kohen Gadol, Hagbe Yeminach, why don't you lift your right hand? And in other words, that's your Chatas. If it turns out to be that the animal on his left is the one that became the Chatas, then the Rosh base of then the man standing on his left, which is the head of the family, would say, Ishi Kohen Gadol, my master Kohen Gadol, Hagbe Smoilach, lift your left hand. Nosnan al Shnei Aseidim, he would then place the two lotteries on the two goats, and he would say the words Lashem Chatzis. We're doing the Mishnah of Lamed Tesavrat. So basically, we're learning about the lottery. He would take one out with his right hand and one with the left hand, and whatever it is, whatever came up in the right hand, the Gan would announce. Whatever came up in the left hand, the head of the Av would announce. Rabbi Shmuel says, there's no need to say the word Chatas, Ela La Hashem. He would only say La Hashem. Now, what does it bother if it says Chatas? There's actually a problem. We have in the Gemara in the Dorim that you're not allowed to say La Hashem. If you want to bring a carbon, you're not allowed to say La Hashem Oila. You have to say Oila La Hashem. Because what happens, you die right after you said the word La Hashem and you said the Abish's name of Atollah. So if you say in vain, first you say the carbon and then you say La Hashem, this way you didn't do anything wrong. So maybe, I have no basis for what I'm saying now, but maybe that's why Rabbi Shmuel says, you don't even need to say Hashem, just say Hashem. So there's no issue. You just said exactly the word when it is. And the answer after him, says the Gemara, Lomali taught of the Kalfi. Why is it that we, according to Rashi's version, why is it that you have to quickly take out the lottery from the box? We don't want him to stand there, that he should look it and size it up and try to figure out which is the Chatas and which is the Azazel. Because even though it's a big virtue to lift your right hand and have the Chatas, we don't want you to do that. What do you call it? Says the Gemara further. Kalfishal Eisai, so the box itself made of wood, Rishal Choilai, so the box itself was never sanctified. The maximum you can put in there is two hands. We don't want any cheating taking place. So only two hands. Masculine Ravina says, we understand why you don't want it to have any more than two hands. We don't want you to people to we don't want you to we don't want you to play around. We don't want you to play around and work out. We're talking about the lottery over here, and we're saying that the lottery itself, whatever comes in the right hand is it is, and the left hand, whatever it is. And we're trying to take all these precautions that you shouldn't cheat. So we make it, according to Rashi, take your hand out very quickly, and the size of the boxes, you cannot have more than two hands rummaging through it at a time. Because the right side, when it comes to Chatas, is a good sign for the eating of Klal Yisrael, as we'll soon see. Velishkal Ela Shel Chayil. What I don't understand, he says, is why should this box remain ordinary? Why don't they sanctify it? Nikdusha, why don't you sanctify it? Says the Gemara, because in Cain, if so, have a like clay shava shalais. You're going to have a vessel based on mikdash, which is made out of wood. And the thing is, with clay shava is the eighth loy avdinan. We don't want you to make any vessels made out of wood. Says the Gemara, v'navda the kesef, v'navda the zav. So why don't you make it silver? Why don't you make it gold? Says the Gemara, because ha'toyre chosam amoyna she'yisrael. The Torah has rachmanis, and not to make levy high expenditures when it's unnecessary. So in the Mishkan we say, good question. Sometimes in the base of Midrash we say, "Einan needs makam hashem." We don't want to say any signs of poverty. Spend and be lavish. And here we say at chassid. The difference is this is not an avodah, and because this is not an avodah, this is just a preparation. Then we have to be very careful with the amount of money you're spending. When it comes to something which is a mitzvah, then there's no limit. Now, how do we know Torah chassid money? So we learn it from by Mitzvah that David tells you first take out all the furniture of the house before the kohen comes to observe or to discern whether the house is considered full teras or not. Says the Gemara, Masnisin, our Mishnah, the Leike Haitana. Our Mishnah does not follow this Tana. Tana we learned, Rabbi Yehuda, remember, Rabbi Yehuda said, the Kohen Gadol, the Sgan and the Kohen Gadol, Machnisin Yodin Bekalfi. He says that there were two hands that went in at the same time. So, and they both take out one of the blocks. Im B'Yamina Kohen Gadol Oil, if the Kohen Gadol, if the Kohen Gadol, it picks up in his right hand, the chatas, Asgan Oimel Ishi Kohen Gadol. So this guy would say, my master Kohen Gadol, Hag B'Yamina, why don't you lift your hand, your right hand? If it turned out to be that the chatas ended up in the right hand of the sgan, of the deputy, roish base of Aimeloy Kohen Gadol, then the head of the family turns to the Kohen Gadol and says, Diber Milach, why don't you say, Daber Milach, say exactly what you have to say, which is Hashem chatas. The name of the sgan, why doesn't the sgan himself say to the Kohen Gadol, just like this sgan said to the Kohen Gadol picked up the chatas? Why doesn't this guy say to the Kohen Gadol, if you picked up the other one, say your words. Because the Kohen Gadol did not end up having the chatas, he feels bad. The Kohen Gadol feels bad because it's a good omen if he picks up with his right hand the chatas. If he doesn't get it, he feels bad. Especially coming from this guy, it's like he's taunting him. Because this guy is next in line. Exactly, this guy is rubbing it in. Yeah. Okay, so the Micah Miflagi, what exactly is the argument? It's a question to the Shainim. Why doesn't the Meshuach Mulchama? Why do we have to introduce this gan here? Rather, let the Meshuach Mulchama, who actually does wear the 8 begadim and everything else, why doesn't he do all of these avodas rather than this gan? And basically, the answer is because he actually is like a Kohen Gadol in certain respects, because he wears the 8 begadim. Then if he does this avodah, the Kohen Gadol would really feel that somebody is out to get him, undermine him, exactly. Once you point him, you don't go down. Remember rule, you don't go down? Yes. Exactly. Yeah, but Shul Chama always wore 8 begadim. Yeah, first base maker. Not second base maker.
Because in first person the
what's the machlek is whether the Kohen Gadol picks up both of them, right hand and left hand, or whether it's two kohenim who take. What's better? The Kohen Gadol's left hand is better than the Gan's right hand, so the Kohen Gadol does both right hand and left hand, or two right hands are better. They're the same. Man Hai Tana, who is the Tana, the Poli Rabbi Yehuda, who is the Tana who argues with Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that the Gan and the Kohen Gadol do together. Yeah. And who argues that? Rabbi Chanina is Gan Kohen. That's Rabbi Chanina is Gan Kohen. The Tanya we learn exactly. Rabbi Chanina is Gan Kohen. Why is this Gan on the right side? She either by Psul the Kohen Gadol. If anything happens, the disqualifies the Kohen Gadol. Nichnas gan umeshamish tachto. He goes in straight away and takes over. That's only if this gan has another purpose, that he actually puts his hand in the box, take out one of the blocks. So what's he asking? Why is he there for? He's there to take out one of the goyrolas. When the Chadina's answer that the only role he has is to right away be ready to step in is an ayah that he doesn't know anything else. He's not involved in the lottery. It doesn't matter. The Torah says you have to do goyrol. You both have to have a goyrol.
So who says that the two are equal, and the Chanina says that they're.
This is the Kohen Gadol is the only one who does it, but his left hand is better than his God's right hand, or equal to the yeah. What we learned? In other words, the Kohen Gadol's mila is in every facet of his being. What we learned? Our boy is shown that the 40 years of Shimon Tzaddik, the 40 years of Shimon Tzaddik reign. Your Gadol oil be mean every year the chatas always ended up on the right side. From here in, the palmim oil be mean palmim oil be smile. From here in, it depends. Sometimes the right, sometimes the left. Well, another thing, where Lashon shows the hardest malbin that red wool thing that they used to tie around on the head of the Seir Mishtaleach. They would all watch it. If it turns white, is a sign that the Eibishter forgave them on all their sins. In his reign, during his reign, every year that string turned white. And we'll see later in the how it worked. But everybody used to watch it. And after that, sometimes it turned white, sometimes it didn't turn white. So that was he was a big tzaddik, and in his chus, I guess Klal Yisrael deserves these things to happen. Another thing, when name Rabbi Doili, the name Rabbi used to burn all the time. The name Rabbi is a machlekes, where exactly was positioned. If the menorah was from east to west, the name Rabbi was as soon as you walked to the base of Mikdash, it was facing straight line from the door to the Kodesh Kodashim. The second candle is called Name Rabbi. It's west from the first one. If it was from north to south, the Name Rabbi was in the center, and all the other candles tilted towards the center. And that when they cleaned it out, everything else burned out, but that one didn't. From the Kanva Elech from here, and Rashi says in Shabbos that from that candle they used to light all the other candles. The Kanva Elech from here in Palmim daily, Palmim covered. Sometimes it burned, sometimes it didn't burn. Well, the fire of Maracha was burning the whole night. But there was never a need to bring wood to the Maracha because it burnt all day. The only thing they had to do in the morning, they built up the pyre, then they put those two gziri. In the afternoon, the only thing they had to do was put on again two gziri. Another like they have a kayim, it's an eitzim. But they never had to add more wood to the fire because miraculously, whatever they put there was sufficient for the whole day. The Kanva Elech after his passing. Sometimes they had to add some edges. And they never avoided putting all wood they had to. No, in the time that they didn't have enough wood, they had to then go ahead and bring more wood. Yeah. There was a bracha in the oimer and the shtei lechem upon him. These three things: the flour offering made out of barley, or the 2 loaves of bread on Shavuos. That's based on Shavuos. The lechem upon him every Shabbos. They used to distribute the kohenim. The whole kohen shemagia kizayis, and every kohen you got a kizayis. You received the kizayis. Yes, oichlei the sava. There were those who ate and they were full just from a kizayis. The yes oichlei moises. Some ate and they had left over because they were full even less than the kazayis. Because the mitzvah of eating lechem apanim was either to eat a kazayis or to get full, whichever one. So the mekan the elech, but then nishtalchem eat a baimer was cursed. What happened? The chol koyin magia kapul. There were more koyinim. They were receiving smaller portions. They were receiving only the size of a bean. So a bean, it was less than a kazayis, nor did it fill them up. Those who were very edel, refined, they would withdraw. Why chap and fight when you're not doing mitzvah anyway? Interesting. Rashi says the lashon. What do you call it? Rashi says here with Russian. Yeah. There was a. Sorry, it wasn't Rashi. Yeah, I think it was Rashi. He said they didn't go in with the mitzvahs. It wasn't Rashi. Uh-huh. I'll tell you, he says the expression, if they ate less than the kazayis, lo yehoya mitzvah achila legamri, kivon she'ein shamela kapu. There's a big argument. The Mishnah Melech has a big chakira. You know, if you eat a half a kazayis of treif, you did an avera matzah, you're just going to get punished. Let's say you have to eat a kazayis of matzah, and you ate a half a kazayis of matzah. Did you do any mitzvah at all, or you did nothing? So the Mishnah Melech has a whole discussion. Is it chatzashir by mitzvahs? And here, from the Lashon of Taishes Yishonim, where he says, if they ate less than a kazayis, but lo yehoya mitzvah achil legamri, they didn't complete do the mitzvah. Sounds like a partial mitzvah they did, but not a complete mitzvah, and therefore they weren't going to fight.
I think that's a reference to the size of the.
It's a kazayis.
Only getting kafu, which is
No,
but
he didn't say no mitzvah. He didn't say lahoya mitzvah. He said lahoya mitzvah chil gamri. What does the gamri mean? It wasn't a complete mitzvah. It wasn't completed. They did part. In other words, they did a part mitzvah. For a part mitzvah, they weren't going to fight. A guardian and the gluttons, they would eat meat. There's a famous, very quickly, the Ravid holds that that when the Gemara has machlekes or mer Yehuda, how much you have to eat to get full. So we hold the chal to the savata, you have to be totally full. But the Rabbanon, if you ate a kazayis, you have to bench. The Ravid holds that this argument of kazayis is mehatoida, not midrabban. So the question everybody asks is, the Gemara says over there that they asked the Eibishter, why are you taking bribes of the Eden? When it says that, Chila es upon him, the Eibishter says, what should I do? I have a soft spot for the Eden. I told them, and they're medaktik in the last one, the kazayis and kebeh. So sounds like they don't have to bench by kazayis. So the answer, the Ravid, based on this Gemara here, that if you are full on a half a kazayis, the Ma'ataydi you have to bench on half a kazayis. But they would force themselves to eat a kazayis, even though they're full, just to be Yitzhak. Rabbi Meir says you have to have a kazayis. Exactly the other way around. Anyway, by the story, the person should have a chelk of the already. He took his portion, his friend's portion away. They called him Ben Chams, you Ganef, or the son of a Ganef. Ad Yemais until the day he died. That was such a despicable act that they called him a Ganef. What's the passage that Chamson actually means a Ganef? It says, Elikai Eibishter, Palteni miyad Rasha, save me from the hand of the Rasha, Mekaf ma'avel v'chaimitz, from the sinner and this chaimitz. And chaimitz is a Ganef. Rabba Mahachamir, so the passage, Limdu Heitiv, learn well, Disha Mishpat, you should go ahead and seek justice. Ashrei Chamoitz, go ahead and support the victim. Support the victim, the one who was robbed from, and not the one who is the robber itself. Actually, this passage we're using the Gemara to refer to a case where there's a borrower, and the borrower claims, I'm not paying you back because I gave you a mashkin worth more and you used up my mashkin. And so we say, no, it doesn't work that way. Let's take each as a separate case. First, let's deal with the victim, the lender. First, pay your loan, and then we'll do another cases whether he used up your mashkin or not. So we learned. Oh, you said Shalosh Mes Poshem. It's not that year that he died. Let me say the Shalosh of this year makes him die. They said to him, how do you know? Every Yom Kippur, I used to encounter in the Kodesh Kedoshim an old man, Lovish Levani, dressed in white, Va'otov Levani, and he used to wrap himself in white. Nichnes imi liyotz imi. He would enter the Kodesh with me and leave. The Yishalmi already asked, no one's allowed to be in the Kodesh Kedoshim, even Malachim. How can he meet a Zaken Echad? So they say it was a Shechina, and he's just using that description. And we see it from here they learned all this for him that a kala wears white and an other wears black. See, white is a sign of gaiety and happiness and so on, positiveness. So a guy dressed in black, and wrapped in black. Nichnas imi went in with me, and didn't walk out with me. And I saw that. It says in the Drush forum, actually I heard from a rabbi, he said what happened here was, and he died. After Sukkot, 7 days later, he became sick. He became sick for 7 days, but basically died. From then on, they no longer use the Abish's name in Kodesh Kedoshim. So I heard Rav once say that what he was saying was that as long I, as a Rav, if I was able to see the positive in all my constituents, I saw everything in white, then I was a good leader and I deserved to be the leader. The moment I started becoming very critical and I looked at my Elam and I saw only black, this guy is no good and that guy is no good, David just said, we don't need leaders like that. So what we learned. I bought in 40 years, 40 for the base of English, so we said between Shimon and Tzaddik and the next years, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the last 40 years, they were no longer oil. If you remember, we also learned the last 40 years they shut down the Sanhedrin. No, they shut down 40 years because the murders were too rife. They stopped doing the capital punishment. Too many murderers. It never turned white. It didn't burn. And the doors of the base of Mikdash would open on its own, as if to say, enemies come in and do your job. Screamed at the doors. You know, they basically, what are you going ahead and you're scaring us? I know you'll be destroyed anyway. It was already said that will be a korban. It says that Psach Levon Dilsecha open base midrash doors, but the fire will come and consume the cedar trees. So what do you have to stand here and remind us? Keep the doors closed. What do you have to every day open up as if to say, come in and burn me down? It'll happen when it happens. Why is the base of midrash called Levana? Shemalbin Avanesei and Shal Yisrael. In the base of midrash is how you whiten the Vedas through Kabbanis and all that. So that sins are red and tshuva is white. Why sometimes you go to forest? It says base yad halavana. It says in the pasuk that that the house of the forest is lavana, which is the base of midrash. Just like a forest constantly blossoming. It also blossoms. What do you mean blossoms? The base of Bishleim built the base of Mikdash. Not by he planted kolmine begotten of all kinds of golden sweets. By mites and paytas is my name, and the tree produced golden fruits. The kiva and sharuach min Hashem, when the wind would come and blow. By you should pay the same. The fruits would fall down. Shenema. It says a pasuk Yirash bal kalvanon period. That it will blow like Lebanon is fruits. through wind. Around the basement, you're not allowed to plant trees. You know, even if they're there, it's not the tree that you know. You're not allowed to plant trees next to the bech. So this must be because they were gold trees that were not up in nests. It's different than eight spider bech. No, they sold it for gold. Gold. Look what it says here. They made a fortune. They used to sell it. But the kivan shenichnasu oivu chav lehechel yakshu. As soon as they came in, it all dried up. Remember, it says uperach levanon umlo, that the blossoming of the levanon umlo fell apart, withered. But also, like Mashiach will come back. And it says paroyach tifrach will blossom again. The sagal of gilas veranin. They placed the lottery. So there's two parts to it. First, you draw a lottery, and then you show your hand, and then you place the blocks on top of each animal. Says the Gemara, 10 times he says the Abish's name that day. Gimel b'vidya edition, 3 times by the first video when he says Ona Hashem, says 3 times the Hashem. And he says Ona Hashem Chatasi, Ona Hashem, and Kapel Lifna Hashem. The same thing by the second video, like the Chatas. He has his power, the power Chatas. He has his own power for the Kohanim. He has the Chatas then Ubisiram Shalech, and the third one was by the Seir Mishalech. The Echad Bigger Olas, and one he says La Hashem Chatas or La Hashem. So 10 times he says Abish's name. Ukavar Amar Hashem. It already happened that the Kohen God will say Hashem, but Nishma Koil B'Richa. You need all the way to Yericha. Amar Avachad B'Rishalayim B'Richa Asara Pasayis Mishalayim Yericha is 40 mil. The tzir dal zeichel and the hinges when you open the door nishma b'shmoinut chumash Shabbos. They can hear the distance of 8 chumash Shabbos, which is only 16,000 mil. So in Yerichai, they heard the door, they didn't hear the tzir. The Tez explain what it means is, what the Tez explain what it means is that in 16 mil they heard exactly, they knew exactly what the sounds were. In Yerichai they heard a noise, but they couldn't tell was it the door opening. They just heard a noise. Say what we say.
So is he saying this is so when the crowd flies and you got by the food, what's the shot is so
That's it. This in those days there's no roads or anything else. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can measure, you can measure. Now you see how much it passes, but you know how much an amount, you know how much a deficit.
Okay. Good question. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe that goof like this is a straight line, or is it the road that had that? But it shouldn't matter. Why would the sound doesn't need the road? So the chayil would be a straight line. And do we know for sure that Yericha is exactly the same Yericha? It could be called Yericha. The goats in Yericha would sneeze from the smell. The smell of the potato is so strong. They actually say if you go to Mishkan Shiloi today, you can smell it's still in the ground there. They smell.
Between Yerushalayim, between Harabais and Yericha. I mean, Yericha, you're not supposed to make a motion there, right?
Yeah, but saying just telling you saying fact.
No, it's just a historical fact. There must be some
I don't know.
connection. Why is Yericha Zeicha that you can hear the sounds, you can smell the smells?
I don't know.
Once you show
Noshim Shebirichai, the women in Yerichai, is basim. They don't have to put on any kind of perfumes, because it's such a good fragrance anyway. Kala Shebirishalaim, is kashin. Doesn't have to put it, doesn't have to do anything because of their taters. So Tais already asked, what's the chiddush Kala Shebirishalaim? He just said, oh, Yerichai. So he said, no, Kala has to put a lot more perfume than a normal girl. So a normal girl, the amount of perfume they need, Yericha was good enough. For a Kala, what you got in Yericha wasn't good enough. But Yerushalayim, it was good enough. But Teish already asked, the Gemara said it's not Nana, it's, there's no Koil Reach, we had more Sach, Koil Reach Amara, there's no Iser of Ila, but there's still an Iser. But here it's Loy Efsher, you have no, if you live in Yerushalayim, you have no choice. But if you remember, Abaya holds Loy Efsher become the Chavens also. So if anybody wants to benefit from the smell, it's also. So how come a Kala can use it? So the answer, even according to Abaya, the Isad is if you can walk towards the base of Migdash to get that smell. But if it's Loy Efsher at all, you're not walking there. And Kumachaven, even Abaya was made, there's no Isad then. So you want further. When it comes to this, the Isser, when Chachamim made an Isser of Kol Reich Hamara, what's not us is only if you go out of your way to, yeah. Easy, my lab. Do goats to my father, Bahare Michmer, in this place called the Mountain of Michmer, where he was Atches, Berech, he's a sneeze from the smell of Titus. An old man told me, I went to Shila, make it like the smell between the walls, the Titus. I was told I didn't do it myself, but a guy in Yerushalayim told me that if you go to Shila, you can still smell. There's a spot there, everybody goes to, you can still smell old fragrance. Is that true? Okay. Rabbiane said, Arias Goil, Rabbiane says, Alias Goil Meter Kalpi Makeves. The Rabbiane says that you must have a Goil. The Aliyah of the Goil lifting the blocks is Mak. If you don't do it, you're not Yaitzer. The second stage, which is taking those blocks of wood and putting it on the top of the goats, that's a mitzvah, but it's not pivotal. It's not critical. Rabbi Yechon says that also the aliyah is not makif. If you don't do the geidel, the kohen just godless decides to determine this is the chat and says it's good enough. It's only he didn't do the mitzvah. And Liba the Rabbi Yehuda says the Gemara. There's a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Chemia we're going to have later in the Gemara that the Chemia says that every avodah that the kohen gadol has to wear is white clothes. Doesn't matter if it's inside or outdoors. All the avodas, if he does not, it says the word chukah, has to be exactly the way the Torah says. If not, you're not Yaitse. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the word chuk is only limited to those avodas inside the Kodesh Kedoshim, and not what happens outside. So, says the Gemara. And now this goydel is an avodah that's taking place outside. So the Gemara is as follows. This argument of Yan Rabbi Liba, Rabbi Yehuda, we don't care what you do outside. And if the Kohen Gadol didn't do the lottery, just went ahead and chose which animals what is good enough. Keep pleading. He says no, that's critical. But the Kohen Gadol follows exactly what it says. Is mandam ma'akva. Rabbi Yana says it's ma'akiv the Gadol. We understand. But the Rabbi Yehuda says if you're not Miromi Gadol, all right. Hani mili avoida. Hagrola lava avoida. It's only talking about avodas. The Gadol is definitely not an avoida. It's only a precursor. It's to determine which animal you do the avodah with, but the actual Gadol itself is not an avodah. So even on the Chem, you'll be made, according to Rabbi Yehuda at least, that if you don't do it, it's not makif. But everyone agrees placing it on top of the animals, that's not an avodah at all. So there's no argument there. Everyone agrees it's not makif. Says he went further. That's one version. Another version, he can be all the way around. According to Nechemia says that it's pivotal, that the Kohen Gadol was exactly what Torah says. There's no question. Everyone agrees that the lottery is important. Keep pleading. The one who says that it's not makif if you don't make a Gadol, follow Rabbi Yehuda. He says the Gadol makif. He says even if you'll be made, the Shainach is different. The Tana Beikra, because it says in the pasuk twice. It says in the pasuk that Anna should bring the goat. Asher Ola Hagoydel Hashem, and then it says regarding the Azazel, he should bring the soyed Asher Ola Hagoydel. And what do we know regarding Kachim? Shana Ola Hakosav La'akif. By Kachim, if the Torah says only once, it means Lechatchila. If the Torah says the same thing twice, it means that even with the Evid. So clearly, even with the Evid. It's amazing. I'll ask you a question. It says in the Braisa, mitzvah lahagel, it's a mitzvah to make a goydel. The imay hagel kosher. He didn't make goydel kosher. So clearly it says here that by the Ebed, if you make girdle, it's kosher. So let's figure out who the author of this is. It's Bishleim Lahachlish Adon Oliver Yehuda Kolabot Pligi Lemakva. According to Lashon, it says, according to Yehuda, everyone agrees that it's not Ma'akiv. They're only arguing in Amnechemya, if it's Alavoid or not. And who says that's not Ma'akiv? According to everybody, it's Yehuda. This price is Yehuda that make a girdle. If you don't, you don't. And Lahachlish is the second Lashon Nam it says, and no. That according to Bechemia, everyone holds it is makif, and they're only arguing Rabbi Yehuda. I mean, according to Rabbi Yanai, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you don't make a girdle, it's makif. Who's also the advice that says that it's not? It is makif. Hamani, who's the author of this brayso? Answer the Gemara. Tani, learn mitzvah lanif. You know, use the word aliyah. It doesn't mean the girdle. It says mitzvah lahagil. It doesn't mean the girdle. It means it's a mitzvah to place it on the thing. So there's a mitzvah, but everyone agrees that you don't have to, because this definitely is not an avodah, and it's not the girdle. It's just after they made the girdle, you ready to determine what's what to put it on an animal. That's a good thing, but it's a mitzvah. You don't have to. Okay, the Gemara will continue asking questions of this machlekes.